I just saw the headline for someone on the YouTube commentating about, well, they don't want people to smoke pot anymore because it's somehow going to hurt them spiritually. Well, quite often it's true. I don't recommend things like this for people. The point of the matter is, sometimes you have to have exceptions to your rules. Now, for example, the idea somehow that someone should give up on their pot, yes, they should. If they're really chronic, they should go without it for a while. Why? Well, just to see what happens, most likely. But, does it really damage you? I don't know, these color commentators that I hear, they try and say, yeah, it's bad for you or whatever. It's mostly kept secret that a lot of these plant medications give you a really good path. That is, they show you that it feels really good to use them. And the information that these color commentators always steal, it comes from Sedona, Arizona, the Sedona method. And it talks about how all of these kind of substances remove negativity so you can feel what you really are. That is a high vibrational spark of the God particles. But while we're encased in these meat suits, human bodies, quite often we feel a lot of restrictions. We feel a lot of aches and pains, especially if you're older. A lot of these color commentators that have stolen the Sedona method, which was also stolen by Dr. David R. Hawkins, who I often quote as being a good teacher. Yes, well, they're all standing on the shoulders of the people that came before. And it's true that Dr. Hawkins talked about this scale of consciousness a great deal, but never once did I see him say, well, I learned it from the Sedona method. So, and then he says that a lot of his books calibrate at like 999 on the scale. No, they don't. They're a good map, these scales of consciousness, but Dr. Hawkins is not without his flaws. And his biggest flaw is he's got a huge ego. How could he have an ego if he's enlightened? Well, I don't know. All I know is watching him, quite often he gives out great information, but sometimes he falls flat on his face because he doesn't say, where he gets all of his information. And, he got his PhD from a diploma mill. It's basically not even a third-rate college. It's a mail-order diploma. So, I don't know. Why would you do that? I don't know. He's dead now to our world. Anyway, back to the pot. Well, this is what the commentators say. And some of these commentators, they say, well, I used to smoke a lot of weed. And I dabbled in sniffy and pills and booze. And now that I'm 30, I figured it all out. No. I mean, they do get a good platform on the internet, a lot of these commentators, but at age 30, you really think, because I've been age 30 a long time ago, at age 30, you think you're a really old person. I remember. You're very wise at age 30. But the point is, when you get to be 60, double 30, you're going to find that a lot of the things you thought were totally true at age 30 don't work for you anymore. Primarily because a 60-year-old body ain't a 30-year-old body. And, all of the metaphysical mumbo jumbo about, how I became such a hot cholaga. In other words, I'm 30 and I'm in better shape than I was when I was 17 or something, and look at my muscles, and I got great cardio. But when you're 60, your body doesn't act like it was when it was 30. Even if you've been working out all those years, it just tends to slow down. And so what about the marijuana? Well, old people keep trying different things to help them get going in the morning. Because the body is just doesn't work like it did when it was young. So if you take what works for you at 30, well, I can quit the weed, I can quit all the other pills and sniffy and booze. Well, by the time you get to 60, most people have got major issues with their bodies. And it doesn't seem to matter how much, you tried to keep them going by exercising. By the time you get to be into your 60s, you'll end up with a lot of things. And that's when you might look back and say, well, when I was 22, I used to smoke a lot of weed. And I felt pretty good. So you might go back to the weed when you're in your 60s. And you might top it off with all kinds of other things, depending on how bad it is. I mean, some people get their hips replaced because the hips have just deteriorated. Where's the metaphysics on all that? Well, I think it has a lot to do with the morphogenic field deteriorating. Why does the morphogenic field, which is basically the model for your physicality to build itself on, an invisible field, why does the morphogenic field deteriorate with age? Some people will say it's the collective consciousness believes it's going to be so. Could be. It was the old idea of, a long time ago they believed you couldn't run a mile in 2 minutes. And then somebody broke that, and now they easily do it. If you're an Olympics class runner, but still, I couldn't run a 2-minute mile even when I was 17. No, so you still had to have the right body in order to do it. But what is really going on with these old bodies? Why do they keep falling apart when they get old? Because theoretically, there's no reason for it. People say, well, it's like cars, they just wear out, they're mechanical. Well, they do have mechanical parts. A hip joint does move, it's mechanical. But the bone inside is alive. Unlike, in your car, your steel parts, we don't really consider those things alive. And they do wear out, ball joints and things. So it's different because living bone should be able to regrow everything it needs to keep that hip joint as good as it was when you were 18. Somehow it is not working that way for so many people. And getting to the source of why it's falling apart, it's not available to me to answer. I just say it's wrong. It shouldn't be this way. Some people say, oh, it's in the cells. The cells grow old and the telomeres at the end of the chromosomes start to get too small. Well, that's still not a good answer. I mean, that's an observation. It doesn't explain why. And I don't know if we're ever going to get a good answer. I think that should be researched. And there's no one really doing much research into the morphogenic field. Rupert Sheldrake, the British scientist, is considered a quack in most circles. And that's the biggest problem that we have among the scientists. As you know, the science proves there's no such thing as this, that. It doesn't prove nothing. These so-called scientists, I don't know, they're useless. We've got a hell of a lot of money that goes into research, and we get very little back for it. Enormous salaries, enormous labs, and what comes out of it? Really shitty. Vast amounts of money spent. I don't know. I mean, I don't see the progress because of all this scientific inquiry. And so they're not. When's it going to change? A tipping point will come. The more people that get curious as to why this and why that, that's what it takes. It takes an enormous number of people to wake up from their slumber where they've left it to everyone else, the experts in their field, to tell them what to think. Once people decide, the experts flunked. We gave them plenty of time to come up with answers and they flunked. So I'm going to get off my couch and I'm going to stop listening to experts, and I'm going to figure it out myself. So I'm still figuring it out. That's your update. I'm Harry Weaver.